the Treasury to invest or spend $700 billion. Of that amount, so far, about $637 billion has been, well, there are plans to invest about $637 billion. Of that, there is $455 billion in commitment, and there have been disbursements of $365 billion. So from the disbursements and the money actually getting out there perspective, we still have a ways to go. There's still some work to do, if it all gets out there at all to begin with. A couple of comments in terms of where money has gone. The capital assistance program, these are actually capital injections into banks. There were nearly 700 banks that have had capital injections by the Treasury, and about $205 billion has gone into that initially. Some of that has been paid back. What are called systemically significant failing institutions programs, about $43 billion went in there. The auto supplier support program here, about $76 billion went there, and the targeted investment group got about $40 billion. And so the taxpayer, we all collectively, isn't this fun? We now own 1/3 of Citigroup. We own nearly 80% of AIG. We own almost 10% of Chrysler, 61% of General Motors, and 35% of GMAC. On the next page, you can see that the taxpayer is now also backing nearly all of the new mortgage lending that's being originated out in the marketplace today. Through Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Ginnie Mae, which basically is the FHA, the taxpayer either owns or guarantees, if you add these two together, about 95% of the new mortgage originations that are taking place today. If it weren't for these government entities, we just wouldn't have much of a mortgage market. You would have difficulty going out and getting a mortgage today. If you're trying to apply for a mortgage in excess of $417,000 in Tucson, Arizona, you will have difficulty getting a mortgage today. There is just no funding for it. And this is unprecedented. What happened here was we had a lot of securitization going on, all the CDOs, collateralized debt obligations, and a lot of other acronyms that Wall Street has come up with over the years. Basically, they were packaging mortgage loans, kind of slicing and dicing them, and putting them back out for investors. And there was a lot of money associated with that. A lot of assets went into it, and the banks earned a lot of fees off of it as well. And that's basically evaporated to almost nothing. This color is kind of hard to see on this slide. I would look at the one in your booklet, but there's the base of it on the bank lending side. And the bank lending has done virtually nothing as well now. If we turn now to the FDIC's actions, a little different angle for the FDIC. One of the most prominent features of this whole crisis has been a crisis in confidence. Banks figured out that they had problems on their own balance sheets, and so then decided that everybody else probably had the same problems and they wouldn't lend to each other. And so we had a big spike in interest rates in what banks were using to lend back and forth to one another. But a key feature of this whole crisis has been a crisis of confidence. I mentioned Indy Mac Bank, Washington Mutual also. Both of those institutions had very severe bank runs, even though the FDIC insurance was in place. Both of them had big bank runs before they were shut down. So the FDIC's actions are centered primarily around restoring confidence and getting the dead wood out of the way with respect to closing certain institutions. So one of the things that was approved under the Emergency Act that was enacted in September of 2008, which I forget the name of now at the moment, increased the FDIC insurance to $250,000. Mission is taking advantage of that. Those of you who are clients and have substantial, in some cases, cash in your portfolios, we've been trying to increase the amounts that are going to some of the banks because the rates are so good, and we've been able to benefit from that. It does have an expiration date, and we'll make sure that we're back under that $100,000 when that expires. There's another piece that I didn't put in here. The FDIC has a line of credit with the Treasury. The FDIC's fund has gotten down to about only $10 billion, which you can burn through pretty darn quickly when it comes to shutting down banks, and we're increasing the rate at which we're shutting them down. So the FDIC may need to tap that line. The FDIC has also discussed accelerating the fee payments from all of its member banks to to basically bring forward the next 2 or 3 years worth of fees to today. They'd have to pay it, and that would refund that to basically take up that $10 billion. Probably the most notable activity that we're all aware of is the FDIC's closure of troubled institutions. The next page has a picture of that and the stress that's evident in our banking system. It's increasingly evident, should I say. This is a picture of how many problem institutions there are going back to 1990, and then the asset base of those problem institutions. The left axis here shows the number of institutions, then that coincides with all the red bars. And then the right axis shows the asset base. So in this case here, it's about $300 billion. And it's about 416 institutions that are listed, that were listed as problem institutions as of June 30th. That's what the FDIC has on their list. So over the last 3 years, the FDIC has been adding to this list. It was 305 at the end of March, and now it's at 416. And things are getting worse. Last Friday, we had the highest frequency of closure. We closed 9 institutions last Friday. I think there's something important to note here, however, and that's that these institutions are all pretty small. You've got 416 institutions that have a value of about $300 billion. That's a pretty small fry. The only reason why it is this small is because all of the too big to fail institutions have already been bailed out. So they're not on the FDIC's radar in quite the way that they otherwise would be. The next page shows you what this year has looked like in terms of bank failures. This shows you bank failures by week on the left axis. You can basically just shows the number that were taken over. And the FDIC goes in on a Friday afternoon and closes everything down, and then they open back up as a different institution, either acquired or a different name on Monday morning. And they've got a good website. There's a lot of information out there if you're interested in following that at all. So we had the high for the year just last week, 115 year to date. 9 last Friday, and 143 banks have been closed since the crisis began. So with all the help from the Fed and the Treasury, what kind of condition is our financial system in today? On the next page, I've got a couple comments about it. I would say preponderance, this is a preponderance of evidence kind of a situation. But the preponderance of evidence suggests that our banking system, our financial system, is still on artificial life support. The Fed has made it very clear that it intends to keep interest rates low. That benefits banks in a very direct way, and it penalizes any of us that are trying to save in a very specific way as well. The way it benefits banks is through what's called spreads, and this should say not band spreads, but bank spreads. And what you're talking about there is what is the income that you earn minus the expense that you pay. Okay, and so right now, essentially what's happening is a bank is borrowing from us at near zero as depositors. We're getting paid virtually nothing, especially if you're in a money market account or a checking account, you might get nothing. And then they're lending that out at a spread where they're earning some interest rate above that. And so those spreads have gotten larger over the course of the last year, and the purpose of that is to make it easier for the banks to make money. And it penalizes all of us that are savers, but the banks start to benefit. But that still has to be in place in order for them to be healthy. They've benefited from mark-to-market rule changes. This is basically a pendulum swing, not an entire one, but in the fall of last year, financial institutions were writing down a lot of very risky assets.